I was kind of tickled a while ago when Sawyer was up here. He got that little fan and started doing. I'm like, man, am I hitting hot licks or what's going on here? Oh, but that he was trying to help me out. I want to tell you a little story. Marlene told me a good one the other day, and I want to share it with y'all. Guy was shipwrecked on an island. Well, you told me so. Yeah. She ain't gonna take the blame for that. Anyhow, a guy got shipwrecked on the island. He was there for about 25 years, all by himself, nobody else. And one day, he was trying everything he could. He was sending out signal flares and building fires, trying to get ships to come by and pick him up. One day, about 25 years, he sat there, and finally a ship came and picked him up. And the captain of the ship looks and he says, There's three buildings here. He says, it's only you. What's going on? He says, well, that first building right there is where I live. He said, that second building right there is my church, where I go to church. And that third building is where the church split and made another building right over here. Evidently, the dude couldn't even get along with himself. But ain't God good? I tell you, we've been attending that midday service over at Holy Week service over at Cedar Grove, and we've heard some good sermons. The guy that brought the sermon this morning, he was spot on, man. If you didn't want to shout after that, there's something wrong with you. But I was wanting to share something tonight. Let's turn to John 12, starting with verse 32. John 12, starting with verse 32. And it says, and I, if I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. This he said, signifying by what death he would die. Now let's turn over to Luke 23, starting with verse 33. Luke 23, starting with verse 33. And when they had come to the place called Calvary, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on the right hand and the other on the left. Then Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. And they divided his garments and cast lots. And the people stood looking on. And even the rulers of them sneered, saying, he saved others, let him save himself if he is the Christ, the chosen of God. The soldiers also mocked him, coming and offering him sour wine, and saying, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. And the inscription also was written over him in letters of Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. This is the King of the Jews. You know, I was thinking about, this is Holy Week. Friday is Good Friday. Sunday's on the way, Easter Sunday. But I started thinking about how people are. If you ask a Jew who crucified Jesus, the Jews will tell you the Romans done it. You ask other folks about who killed Jesus, they might say, well, the crowd insisted. The The leaders wouldn't have it any other way. But truth be known, we all are guilty of crucifying Jesus. We all had a stake in that. Whether we want to believe it or not, we all had a stake in that. And I want to read this part right here. It says, when looking at Rembrandt's painting of the three crosses, your attention is drawn first to the cross in which Jesus died. Then as you look at the crowd gathered around the foot of that cross, you are impressed by the various facial expressions and actions of the people involved in the awful crime of crucifying the Son of God. Finally, you see then your eyes may drift to the edge of the painting to catch sight of another figure, almost hidden in the shadows. Some art critics say that it is a representation of Rembrandt himself, for he recognized that by his sins he helped nail Jesus to the cross. Someone has said it is a simple thing to say that Christ died for the sins of the world. It is quite another thing to say that Christ died for my sins. It is a shocking thing that we can be as indifferent as Pilate, as scheming as Caiaphas, as callous as the soldiers, as ruthless as the mob, or as cowardly as the disciples. It wasn't just that what they did. It is what I did also. I nailed him to the cross. I crucified the Christ of God. I joined the mockery. Place yourself in the shadows with Rembrandt. You too are standing there. But then recall what Jesus said as he hung on the cross. Father, forgive them. Thank God that includes you and me. Behold the Savior of mankind, nailed to the shameful cross. How was the love how vast the love that he included, how vast the love that he inclined to bleed and die for thee. It's contributed to Wesley. It says, the cross of Christ reveals the love of God at its best and the sin of the world at its worst. I've been thinking a lot this week about this Holy Week, how Jesus was beaten, he was crucified, and he didn't have to do any of it. He really didn't. But he realized that if he didn't go through with this plan, that all mankind would be on a downhill road. We'd all wind up in hell. You know, I started thinking, if you just close your eyes and start thinking, who really crucified Jesus? We all did. We all did. Can you just imagine closing your eyes and hearing that hammer and realizing that it's your hand that's driving the nails? People, we all have blood on our hands. Whether we want to admit it or not, we all have blood on our hands. We were all guilty, and he died to buy our pardon. We were all guilty. And can you imagine just hammering that nail and him looking up in your face and saying, I forgive you. A man who did nothing but good to help people out. Committed no sin, committed nothing to be crucified for. But he looks up in their face and he looks down from that cross and says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. I started thinking about people that are close to me. We all have people in our lives, family members, that, you talk to them. They don't want to acknowledge their fault. Today in the sermon that the guy at Cedar Grove was talking about, he says, you can be in the circle and still miss it. He was talking about how Judas, he was called. There was no mistake about him being in that group. Jesus called him. And he was one of those 12. Peter, the one that denied him, he was one of the 12. But there was a big difference between Peter and Judas. Peter realized that he had blood on his hands, that he had betrayed the Son of God. He realized that he had done wrong, and he asked Jesus, for forgiveness. He wept bitterly. I know I messed up. Now he's dead. But when all things were said and done, and in the book of Acts, Peter, he preached a sermon, and I think it was like 3,000 souls were saved. When he got plugged in, he got plugged in. Then you look at Judas. He was also in those 12, but he sold out. He sold out to that little bit of money, and he lost his eternal home. He sold out to, I heard one time that he was a zealot, and he wanted Jesus to show up and overthrow the Roman government. So he was doing everything that he could to push Jesus in that way. But when he sold Jesus out, when he betrayed Jesus, he could have came back like Peter. He could have said, Jesus, I've messed up. Please forgive me. But instead, he goes out and hangs himself. He takes his fate into his own hands. And I'm afraid when he closed his eyes here after hanging himself, he's got all eternity to think about what he did while he's burning in hell. See, there's a lot of folks that hang around and they want to be thought of as good people. They want to be thought of as church people. They want to be thought of as the ones that will be there on work days. Be there to do whatever the preacher asks them to. But when they get outside the doors, they live a different kind of a life. But Jesus shed his blood for everybody. He shed his blood that whoever will say, Jesus, forgive me of my sins, he'll do it. He'll do it. He'll wrap his arms around us and say, I forgive you. Like I said, I've been thinking a whole lot. I've been thinking about Just imagine myself with that hammer in my hand, driving nails until somebody had done nothing wrong. That's the way we are, folks. Until we accept Jesus, we're the ones driving those nails into his hands, into his feet. We're the ones that's crucifying. We all need forgiveness. We all need to say, you know, it's on me, God. I done it. Been thinking about this week. Is there anyone here that wants to pray about anything? Anyone here that wants to pray? If not, I'm going to turn it over to Tom.